The sky above Ashara was a relentless canvas of swirling ash and molten light, the air thick with the scent of sulfur and heat. From the jagged cliffs that crowned the volcanic ridges, I watched the serpents dance in the fiery sky, massive beasts twisting and diving with a grace that defied their terrifying size. Their scales caught the fading sun, casting sparks like living embers against the smoke-darkened horizon. For years, I had been an outcast among the sky serpent riders, my name whispered with a mixture of pity and blame. The accident from my youth, the fall that had branded me as cursed, still haunted me in quiet moments like this. The shame was a heavy cloak, and the loneliness deeper than even the volcanic chasms below. Kalen, a voice called, sharp and familiar. Lyra, my childhood friend, approached with quick steps, her braided hair catching stray embers in the wind. Her green eyes held the fierce protectiveness that had always steadied me. "You shouldn't be here alone," she said, her tone equal parts scolding and concern. I managed a small smile. "Where else would I be?" She sighed, glancing toward the horizon where the serpents writhed and soared. "The others don't understand," I said quietly. "They see me as a danger, a reminder of failure." Lyra's gaze softened. Maybe it's time they saw something different. Her words hung between us as the ground beneath our feet trembled, a sharp, warning pulse from the restless volcano. The air grew thick with ash, and the serpents above cried out, their voices echoing like thunder. Drawn by a force I couldn't name, I slipped away from the ridge toward a narrow valley veiled in smoke and shadow. The heat here was almost unbearable, but something deeper called to me. There, nestled among cracked obsidian stones, lay a serpent unlike any I'd seen. Its scales shimmered with an impossible blend of gold and crimson, flickering with an inner flame that seemed alive. It was larger and more majestic than the others, its eyes ancient and wise. I hesitated, heart pounding. The stories of the legendary sky serpent, the rare bond, had always seemed like myths told to inspire or frighten. Yet here it was, flesh and fire, breathing smoke into the molten air. "Come," I whispered, reaching out with a trembling hand. The serpent's great head lowered slowly, nostrils flaring as it studied me. In that moment, an electric connection sparked, an unspoken understanding passing between us. The shame and isolation that had clung to me began to crack, replaced by a fierce, flickering hope. Suddenly, a sharp rustle alerted me to a figure watching from the shadows. Torin, a scout from the Ember Fang tribe, crouched on a distant outcrop, his eyes narrowed and calculating. He saw the bond too, and I knew that the fragile piece of Ashara's skies was about to shatter. As I mounted the rare serpent's back for the first time, the world seemed to tilt and roar. The fire within me surged, and the winds of Ashara carried us upward toward a fate I could no longer deny. The flames of the volcanic skies were no longer just a backdrop to my exile. They had become the crucible of my destiny. But in the shadows beyond the ash and smoke, I could sense the embered fury of the Ember Fang tribe, their wrath ready to ignite. This was only the beginning. I gripped the serpent's scales tighter, breath steadying. Whatever awaited, I would face it with the fire burning inside me. The sky was vast, the serpent soared, and my story, our story, was about to take flight. The morning sun rose over the jagged peaks of Ashara, painting the volcanic skies with bruised hues of orange and crimson. From the ridge that crowned the sky serpent riders' encampment, I watched the horizon with a mixture of dread and wonder. The rare serpent lay coiled beneath me, its scales shimmering like molten glass, reflecting the fiery dawn's light in a dance of flickering flames. The bond between us was new, fragile, and bewildering, a thread of connection that pulled me from the shadows of my outcast life toward a destiny I scarcely dared to imagine. It was not easy. Every movement felt foreign, every command a test of will and trust. The serpent's breath was warm against my skin, a pulse of life that thrummed beneath my palms. I spoke to it in the quiet, soothing tones I'd practiced, trying to calm the tempest inside my chest as much as the creature beneath me. Its eyes, deep pools of amber fire, mirrored my own uncertainty and flickered with something like patience. But the tribe did not share my wonder. From the fringes of their gathering, eyes followed me, sharp, suspicious, weighed down by the ghosts of old fears. The elders whispered of omens and ancient curses, their voices low and trembling like the rumble of distant thunder. To them, I was no longer just the boy who had fallen from grace. I was a harbinger of chaos, a living symbol of the unknown. In the midst of this growing divide, Lyra found me. Her approach was as steady and sure as the serpents she rode, her presence a balm against the sting of isolation. "Kaelin," she said softly, her sharp green eyes alight with fierce compassion, "you're stronger than you know. This bond, it's more than chance. It's a legacy. And you don't have to face it alone." Sitting by the firelight that evening, she shared stories passed down through generations. Tales of riders who had forged bonds with the rare serpents long, thought lost to legend. Her voice wove through the crackling flames, painting pictures of courage born from trust, of flight as freedom, of fire as transformation. I listened, the embers of hope kindling in my chest, alongside the roaring fire. Yet even as Lyra's words lifted me, the shadow of danger crept closer. From the ash-choked forests beyond our borders, I sensed eyes watching, calculating, waiting. Emberfang scouts moved like ghosts in the smoke, their loyalty to Varric burning hot with ambition and hatred. They saw me not as a boy struggling to find his place, but as a threat, the rare serpent at my side, a challenge to their dominion of the skies. Days passed in a blur of training and quiet confrontation. I wrestled with the serpent's strength, learning to anticipate its movements, to become one with its soaring grace. Each flight was a battle against the doubts that clung to me like ash, each landing a small victory against the weight of my past. Lyra was there at every turn, a voice of reason when my thoughts spiraled, a hand steadying mine when fear threatened to overwhelm. Together, we navigated the tangled web of tribal customs and whispered suspicions, our friendship a fragile but unbreakable bond. One afternoon, as the sun dipped beneath the smoky horizon, we stood watching the distant ridge where Ember Fang scouts had been spotted. Their silhouettes were sharp against the dying light, a reminder that the peace we clung to was as fragile as the volcanic glass beneath our feet. "They're watching," Lyra said, her voice low but steady. "They know." I swallowed hard, the serpent stirring beneath me, its heat seeping into my bones. "Then we have to be ready." The night stretched long and restless. In the flickering shadows of my tent, I spoke softly to the rare serpent, promising courage and trust even when my own heart trembled. Outside, the tribe's murmurs rose and fell with the wind, a chorus of doubt and hope intertwined. As I lay beneath the volcanic stars, the weight of my past pressed down, but so did the promise of flight, of freedom, waiting just beyond the ash and smoke. Tomorrow, the skies would test me, and I would rise or fall on wings of fire. But for now, I was not alone. Lyra's unwavering belief was a flame that refused to be extinguished, and in that, I found the first true spark of belonging. The journey was just beginning. The skies above Ashara, churned with ash and flickers of molten rock, painting a restless canvas of smoke and fire. Beneath this volatile dome, I stood alone on the jagged outcrop overlooking the encampment, my gaze fixed on the serpents coiled and slumbering like ancient sentinels beneath the orange glow. My rare serpent, whose scales shimmered with a faint ethereal light, rested nearby, its breath a soft hiss that stirred the hot volcanic wind. Yet, despite the serenity it seemed to embody, unease gnawed at my heart. The murmurs among my tribe had grown louder, whispers of fear and superstition that clung to my bond like smoke to flame. The council fire crackled in the distance, where the elders had gathered to deliberate. I knew I was summoned, not as an honored rider, but as the outcast who dared to claim a serpent no one else could. My footsteps crunched softly on the ash-laden ground as I approached, the weight of their stares pressing heavier than the volcanic heat. Eldrin, the tribal elder with his silver hair and molten lava eyes, sat at the center, his visage carved with years of wisdom and sorrow. His gaze met mine, and I saw the flicker of something deeper concern, perhaps, or a warning buried beneath his calm exterior. Kalen, Eldrin's voice rang out, low and resonant. The bond you share is unlike any in our history. The serpent you ride carries the mark of the ancients, a flame that can either forge or consume. His words twisted in the smoky air, heavy with implication. The other elders exchanged glances, their faces etched with old fears and grudges. Superstitions had always shadowed the rare serpents, creatures thought to be the living embodiment of Ashara's volatile spirit. To ride one was to dance on the edge of destruction. Many among us question your place, your loyalty, Eldrin continued, his voice softening, yet no less grave. This bond stirs memories best left buried, whispers of an era when the skies burned not with fire, but with war. I swallowed hard, the sting of their judgment cutting deep. The memory of my childhood fall, the shame, the exile it all surged within me like a flame threatening to consume. I wanted to rise above it, to prove that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to face it. Yet, standing before the council, I felt the weight of their doubt, like chains tightening around my spirit. As the council session ended, I found solace in the familiar presence of Lyra. Her eyes, sharp and steady, met mine with unwavering support. "You carry more than just a serpent, Kalen," she said quietly. "You carry hope for all of us. Don't let their fear become your cage." Her words kindled a fragile spark within me, a flicker of warmth against the cold ash of my doubts. Together, we walked beneath the volcanic skies, the air thick with ash and anticipation, as if the land itself held its breath for what was to come. But beyond our borders, shadows gathered. Hidden among the jagged cliffs, Torin, the Ember Fang scout, moved like a wraith. His eyes, sharp and calculating, observed our every move, his presence a silent herald of the storm brewing. The rival tribes' ambitions were no secret, their hatred for me a burning ember that threatened to ignite into war. The days that followed were a crucible. I navigated the intricate dance of tribal politics, facing cold stares and veiled threats. Eldrin's cryptic warnings haunted my every step, his stories of ancient prophecies, weaving a tapestry of dread that clung to my serpent's glowing scales. Yet, amid the whispers and smoke, Lyra's friendship remained a steadfast flame, guiding me through the darkness. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the volcanic peaks, painting the sky in hues of fire and ash, Eldrin invited me to his hut. The air inside was thick with the scent of herbs and ancient scrolls, relics of a time when serpents and riders were bound by sacred rites. "You must understand, Kalen," Eldrin said, his eyes reflecting the flickering flame. "The bond you share is both gift and curse. It will test you, challenge the very core of your being. But it can also unite us if you have the courage to lead." His words stirred a tumult within me, a mixture of fear and fierce resolve. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and shadowed by the specter of Ember Fang's wrath. Yet, as I looked to the glowing eyes of my serpent and felt Lyra's steady presence beside me, I knew that flight was not just escape, it was freedom. And freedom was worth fighting for. The night grew thick with ash as distant howls echoed from the Ember Fang's territory. Torin's reconnaissance had revealed plans darker than mere rivalry and impending assault that could shatter the fragile peace and engulf us all in flame. The tribe's divisions deepened, with some elders blaming me for inviting disaster, while others whispered of prophecy and destiny. In the face of this storm, I wrestled with my own fears. Could I rise above the scars of my past? Could I lead a tribe that had cast me aside? The answer lay not in strength alone, but in the courage born from the fire within, a fire that now burned brighter, fueled by the bonds of trust, friendship, and the fierce will to soar beyond the ash and smoke. As dawn crept over the volcanic horizon, painting the land with hues of molten gold, I stood once more on the precipice. The rare serpent stirred beneath me, its scales catching the first light like embers set aflame. Together, we would face the coming trials. Together, we would write a new chapter in the skies of Ashara. But as the winds whispered through the charred trees, carrying voices from the shadows, one question remained. Would the tribe follow, or would fear ground us all forever? The answer lay in the flight ahead. The blistering sun beat down relentlessly over the volcanic cliffs of Ashara, painting the jagged edges with hues of molten gold and crimson. I stood at the edge of the training grounds, my heart pounding in my chest like the distant rumble of the sleeping volcano. Below me, the rare serpent waited, a magnificent beast whose scales shimmered with the iridescent glow of molten glass, reflecting the fiery sky above. Its eyes, deep pools of ancient wisdom, flicked toward me with an almost knowing gaze. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just in my life, but in the fate entwined with this rare creature. I took a deep breath, steadying the whirlwind of nerves swirling inside. The memory of my fall haunted me still, a shadow that clung to my every thought. But this time, I was determined to rise above it. With cautious hands, I grasped the serpent's leathery reins and swung myself atop its powerful back. The heat radiating from its scaled body was intense, a living ember beneath me that seemed to fuel my own resolve. The first moments were stiff, awkward, our movements uncoordinated, mismatched like two strangers attempting a fragile dance. The serpent flexed its vast wings, sending a gust of heated wind that carried the scent of sulfur and ash. I tightened my grip, willing my limbs to respond. Slowly, painfully, we lifted off the ground. The roar of the wind filled my ears, drowning out the doubts that clamored within. "Steady, Kalen," Lyra's voice called out, clear and unwavering. From the training grounds below, she watched with sharp green eyes that sparkled with encouragement and a hint of mischief. Her presence grounded me, a tether to the world beyond my fears. Over the next hours, Lyra became more than a friend. She was my guide through the labyrinth of serpent lore and tribal customs. We sat beneath the gnarled ash trees, their branches blackened by fire, but resilient as ever, as she recounted the sacred traditions of our people. Her words painted pictures of the ancient riders who soared these skies, their spirits forever bound to the serpents they tamed. "You must listen to the serpent, not just with your ears, but with your heart," she told me one evening, her voice soft as the embers fading in our campfire. "They are not merely beasts of burden. They are partners, extensions of your very soul." Her wisdom seeped into me, chipping away at the walls I had built around my heart. I tried to see through the veil of doubt and isolation, to imagine myself not as an outcast, but as a rider worthy of the skies. Eldrin, the tribal elder with eyes like molten lava, became another pillar of strength. One twilight, I found myself sitting beside him, the crackling fire casting flickering shadows across his weathered face. His stories carried the weight of history tales of courage and sacrifice etched into the very bones of Ashara. "Flight is not just escape," Eldrin said, his voice a low rumble. "It is freedom, a connection to the fire that burns within all of us. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to rise despite it." His words ignited something deep inside me, a spark kindling into a growing flame. The next days were filled with grueling training hours, spent synchronizing my every movement. With the serpent's powerful wings, learning to anticipate its instincts as if they were my own. Lyra's guidance was relentless yet patient, her laughter a balm to my weary spirit. The moment of breakthrough came suddenly. We were soaring above the glowing rivers of lava, the night sky painted with streaks of ember and ash. The serpent banked sharply, wings slicing through the hot air with grace. For the first time, I felt our hearts beat as one, the fear that had gripped me so tightly, now dissolved in the rush of wind and fire. I laughed aloud, the sound raw and free, echoing across the volcanic plains. The skies of Ashara stretched endlessly before me, a canvas of blazing freedom. In that instant, I was no longer the outcast, defined by a fall and a shameful past. I was a rider bound by courage, by fire, by flight. But even as joy surged through my veins, a shadow lingered at the edge of my vision. The Ember Fang watched, their fury growing as my bond with the rare serpent deepened. The path ahead promised trials that would test not only my skill, but the very fire within my soul. For now, though, I soared free, fierce, and ready to face whatever storms the volcanic skies would bring. The lesson of flight was more than mastering the air. It was learning to trust, to belong, and to ignite the courage that had always flickered beneath the ash. The first light of dawn barely pierced the thick veil of ash hanging over Ashara, casting an eerie twilight across the volcanic land. I stood beside Lyra in the shadowed tent at the edge of our camp, eyeing the crude map spread between us. The flickering firelight threw dancing shadows on the worn parchment, illuminating the jagged lines that marked the Ember Fang's known patrol routes. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and molten rock, a constant reminder of the land's fury beneath our feet. "They're planning something," Lyra whispered, tracing a finger over the map. Tauren's scouts spotted increased movement near the eastern ridge. Too many for a simple patrol. I tightened my grip on the map. "During the Festival of Fire," I said, voice low, "it's the perfect time. Our defenses will be down, distracted by the celebrations." Lyra's sharp green eyes met mine, a spark of worry mixed with determination. We need to warn the tribe. But the path to that warning was fraught with peril. The elders had not forgotten my fall from grace, nor the shadows that had clung to me since childhood. To many, I was still the outcast, the boy who brought shame with his failure. Now, with this rare serpent bond marking me as different, suspicion only deepened. Hours later, we gathered in the great fire pit clearing, the heart of the Sky Serpent Riders' Council. Eldrin sat quietly at the center, his molten eyes reflecting the flames as voices rose around us. Kalen, Elder Thane's voice boomed, filled with accusation. "Your reckless actions have brought this shadow upon us. The Ember Fang grow bold because of you." Murmurs rippled through the circle. I felt the weight of their gazes, some filled with doubt, others with thinly veiled contempt. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "We cannot afford to ignore the threat. Tauren's scouts confirm an attack during the festival. We must prepare." The council fractured between those who feared the growing danger and those who clung to old grievances. I stood silent, the firelight casting flickering patterns on the rare serpent curled at my feet, its scales shimmering like molten gold. Later, alone atop the rocky outcrop overlooking our lands, I let the volcanic glow wash over me. The distant rumble of war drums from Ember Fang echoed faintly, a grim reminder of the storm approaching. The fire within me, once tempered by doubt, now burned fierce and bright. I would not let the tribe fall. Not again. The Festival of Fire was meant to be a celebration of life amidst the ash and flame, but this year it would become a battlefield, and I would be ready. As the sun climbed higher, the shadows of Ember Fang grew longer, but so did the courage rising in my chest. The skies of Ashara were about to ignite, and I would be the spark that held the darkness at bay. The night before the festival, I found Lyra near the serpent pens, her eyes reflecting the stars. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "we face it together." I nodded, a rare smile breaking through the tension. together. The fire crackled, the serpents stirred, and the winds whispered of battles to come. In Ashara, where flight meant freedom and fire could consume or illuminate, our fate was about to be forged in flame. The ember-fanged shadows lengthened, but so did the light of newfound resolve. And as the first festival torch was lit, I knew the skies would never be the same.